This isn't a success story, it's a confession. A quiet admission of defeat whispered into the void. It's the story of someone who, despite their best efforts, has consistently fallen short. We live in a world obsessed with achievement. Social media feeds overflow with carefully curated highlight reels. It's easy to feel like you're the only one struggling. But here's the truth. You're not alone. Behind the perfectly filtered Instagram posts, there are millions of us. The quiet majority who are just trying to keep our heads above water. I grew up in a town where ambition went to die, a place where dreams were something you had in high school and then quietly abandoned. My parents were good people, hardworking, decent, and utterly exhausted. They never talked about dreams or aspirations, at least not with me. I was a good kid, the definition of average. Not bad enough to be a concern, not good enough to be remarkable. Somewhere along the way, we're taught that life is a race. But what happens when the finish line keeps moving? When every milestone you reach only reveals another, more distant goal? This is the story of a life spent chasing that elusive finish line, of trying to measure up to an ideal that feels increasingly impossible to attain. This is the confession of a failure. Childhood was a blur of beige. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige lunches. It wasn't a childhood of hardship, just unremarkable. My parents moved through life with a quiet resignation. School was no different. I was a ghost in the hallways. My report cards were a testament to mediocrity. Second place trophies and the consolation prize of almost winning the spelling bee, almost making the varsity soccer team. My bedroom became a shrine to second place, a collection of participation trophies and certificates of achievement. I tried to find solace in those tokens of mediocrity, but the truth was, the only thing worse than failing was coming close enough to taste victory, only to have it snatched away. The weight of potential, a burden too heavy to carry. He has potential. Those three words became both a blessing and a curse. The potential was there, but it was a heavy burden to carry. It was the weight of expectation pressing down on me. It was the fear of failure magnified. Escape to nowhere. College as a temporary reprieve. College was supposed to be my escape. I landed at Eastwood State, a sprawling, nondescript campus. My parents drove me to campus, their silence speaking volumes. For a while, it felt like an escape, but I still felt like an outsider, an observer peering in on a world I couldn't quite crack. It was in college that I met Anna. She was everything I wasn't. Bright, bubbly, effortlessly charismatic. We met at a party and we talked for hours that night. She told me about her dreams of opening her own preschool. We started dating, and she was a burst of sunshine in my otherwise gray existence. But I could only marvel at her from a distance. But I was a black hole, slowly sucking the joy out of everything around me. My own insecurities cast a long shadow over our relationship. I was distant, withdrawn, emotionally unavailable. I built walls, retreated into myself, pushed her away with silence. It ended with a tearful conversation in our tiny apartment. She moved on, and I watched from a distance. New York City, the city of dreams. I arrived with 2 suitcases and naive hope. I found a cramped, overpriced apartment. The city was a constant assault on the senses. I was a small-town boy adrift in a sea of ambition. The soul-crushing grind corporate life as a cage of golden bars. I landed a job in the belly of the corporate beast. I spent my days chained to a desk, staring at a computer screen. My colleagues were a blur of perfectly pressed suits and practiced smiles. I tried to fit in, but it felt like wearing someone else's skin. Every forced smile chipped away at my soul. The illusion of control, seeking solace in spreadsheets and performance reviews. I sought solace in the illusion of control. I meticulously tracked my progress against quarterly goals. I obsessed over performance reviews, clinging to every scrap of praise. I told myself that this was just a stepping stone. But deep down, a gnawing doubt whispered that this was it. The entrepreneurial itch, a glimmer of hope in the corporate desert. The monotony of my corporate existence was broken by entrepreneurial ambition. My social media feeds became an endless scroll of 20-somethings striking it rich. I read articles about side hustles and passive income streams. The idea came to me in a flash of inspiration. I would create a social media management platform for small businesses. I poured every spare minute and every last dollar of my meager savings into my new venture. I named it Social Sphere, a name that felt both vaguely futuristic and reassuringly corporate. I spent countless late nights hunched over my laptop, teaching myself the basics of web design and coding, my fingers cramped from typing and my eyes bloodshot from staring at the screen. I printed business cards on cheap cardstock, the ink slightly smudged. I created a website, a Frankensteinian creation of stock photos and clunky text boxes. I practiced my elevator pitch in the mirror, my reflection staring back with a mixture of skepticism and pity. For a brief, exhilarating moment, it felt like I was on to something. I landed a few clients, mostly through sheer persistence and the willingness to work for next to nothing. I spent my days churning out social media posts for a dog groomer, a used bookstore, and a bakery that specialized in gluten-free cupcakes. But the reality of entrepreneurship, it turned out, was far less glamorous than the hype. My days were a blur of chasing invoices, placating demanding clients, and struggling to keep up with the ever-shifting algorithms of the social media giants. The revenue, when it came, was a trickle, barely enough to cover the costs of my caffeine addiction and my ever-increasing credit card debt. The end, when it came, was swift and merciless. Clients disappeared, their enthusiasm for my services waning as quickly as it had appeared. The dog groomer found a niece who could manage their Instagram account for free. The bookstore went out of business, a victim of Amazon and the relentless march of progress. The bakery owner decided that social media was a young person's game, her words a stinging indictment of my own perceived failure. I shut down the website, the digital equivalent of boarding up a storefront window. I deleted the Social Sphere email account, the inbox a graveyard of unanswered pitches and automated spam. I threw away the remaining business cards, the once bright colors now faded and tinged with a sense of regret. The failure stung, not just because of the financial loss, but because it felt like a confirmation of my own inadequacy. I had dared to dream, to believe that I could be one of the chosen few who escaped the soul-crushing embrace of corporate mediocrity, only to be brought crashing back down to earth by the unforgiving realities of the marketplace. The failure of Social Sphere sent me spiraling, not into a dramatic tailspin of self-destruction, but into a quieter, more insidious form of despair. The kind that wraps around you like a weighted blanket, sapping your energy and motivation, leaving you feeling heavy and hollowed out. I went back to my corporate job, my tail between my legs, my dreams of entrepreneurial glory lying shattered at my feet. The once familiar rhythms of office life felt even more suffocating now. The pointless meetings, the endless emails, the forced camaraderie of after-work drinks, all felt like a cruel joke, a constant reminder of my own inability to break free from the gravitational pull of mediocrity. I sought refuge in the written word, not in the aspirational self-help books that had once fueled my entrepreneurial dreams, but in the quiet solace of literature. I devoured novels and memoirs, immersing myself in the lives of fictional characters and real-life individuals who had faced their own demons and emerged, if not triumphant, then at least intact. A world of paper and ink finding solace in the margins of literature. I took a job at a small academic press, a world away from the fast-paced, data-driven world of digital marketing. Surrounded by stacks of books, the air thick with the smell of paper and ink, I found a strange comfort in the slow, deliberate pace of publishing. I edited manuscripts on obscure historical topics, my red pen tracing the contours of forgotten battles and long-dead monarchs. The work was tedious, often mind-numbingly so, but it provided a sense of order and structure that my own life seemed to lack. I took pride in my meticulous attention to detail, my ability to spot a misplaced comma or an errant footnote. In the footnotes and bibliographies, in the meticulous citations and cross-references, I found a strange beauty, a testament to the enduring power of human knowledge and the interconnectedness of ideas. The slow march of time, marking the passage of years in red ink. The years passed, marked not by grand achievements or life-altering events, but by the steady accumulation of red ink on manuscript pages and the gradual accumulation of dust on my apartment shelves. I became a creature of routine, my days a predictable cycle of work, takeout dinners, and solitary evenings spent reading in the flickering glow of the television. I dated sporadically, brief encounters that flickered and faded like dying embers. I told myself I was open to love, to companionship, but the truth was, I had grown comfortable in my solitude, my heart encased in a protective layer of cynicism and self-doubt. I watched from a distance as my friends and former classmates got married, bought houses, started families. Their lives, once so similar to my own, now seemed to exist on a different plane, a parallel universe where success and fulfillment were not elusive dreams but tangible realities. The echoes of past failures, fear and hope in equal measure. 32. A year that felt both terrifyingly close to middle age and a million miles away from the dreams of my youth. I was still toiling away at the academic press, my days a predictable rhythm of commas, footnotes, and the occasional existential crisis triggered by a particularly dry manuscript on medieval philosophy. The failure of social sphere, though, still lingered, a ghost haunting the edges of my thoughts. It had been a humbling experience, a stark reminder of my own limitations, and yet, a strange thing had happened in the aftermath of that failure. The fear, the paralyzing fear of falling short that had always held me back, had somehow lessened. It was as if, having stared failure in the face and survived, I had developed a kind of immunity to its power. And with that lessening of fear came a flicker of hope, a fragile ember glowing in the ashes of past disappointments. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't destined to spend the rest of my days trapped in a cycle of quiet desperation. Maybe there was still time to salvage something meaningful from the wreckage of my ambitions. LearnLink. A second chance to make a difference? The idea for LearnLink came to me, as these things often do, in a moment of unexpected clarity. I was reading an article about the growing achievement gap between students from wealthy families and those from low-income backgrounds. The statistics were stark, the implications even more so. Access to quality education, the article argued, was becoming increasingly stratified, a luxury good reserved for those who could afford it. It was a problem that resonated with me on a visceral level. I thought back to my own childhood, to the limited opportunities available in my small town, to the sense of resignation that hung heavy in the air. I thought of all the kids who never had a chance, whose potential was stifled before it could even blossom, not because of a lack of talent or ambition, but because of a system rigged against them. LearnLink, I decided, would be my attempt to level the playing field. It wouldn't be another shallow marketing gimmick, another attempt to chase fleeting profits. This time, I told myself, it would be different. This time, I would be driven by something bigger than myself, something that actually mattered. I threw myself into the project with a fervor I hadn't felt since the early days of Social Sphere. I spent my evenings and weekends hunched over my laptop, teaching myself basic coding, devouring online tutorials, and desperately trying to transform my idealistic vision into a functioning website. I cold emailed every educator, nonprofit organization, and community leader I could find. My inbox a testament to my own relentless persistence. I pitched my idea at every networking event and conference I could afford to attend, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke of bridging the digital divide and empowering underprivileged students. To my surprise, some people actually listened. A local foundation offered a small grant, enough to hire a freelance developer to help with the more technical aspects of the platform. A retired teacher with a passion for educational equity volunteered her time as an advisor. A local newspaper even ran a small article about my efforts, the headline proclaiming me a local entrepreneur tackles education inequality. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like I was actually making a difference. Students signed up, eager for affordable tutoring and academic support. Tutors, mostly college students and recent graduates, joined the platform, drawn to the opportunity to share their knowledge and make a bit of extra cash. But the reality of running a tech startup, even one with noble intentions, proved to be far more challenging than I had anticipated. The technology, despite my best efforts and the developers' valiant attempts to salvage my amateur code, was plagued by glitches and bugs. Funding, always a challenge for early-stage ventures, proved even more elusive in the competitive world of education technology. The demise of LearnLink hit me harder than the failure of Social Sphere. This time, it wasn't just about money or ambition. It was about the crushing weight of good intentions, the realization that even the most noble aspirations could be ground down by the relentless gears of reality. I retreated, once again, into the familiar comfort of my unremarkable life. I went back to my editing job, my shoulders slumping a little further with each passing year. I stopped talking about my entrepreneurial dreams, the words catching in my throat like dry heaves. I watched from a distance as the world continued to spin, seemingly oblivious to my own quiet unraveling. Friends got married in exotic locations, their wedding photos plastered across social media, their happiness a stark contrast to the dull ache in my own chest. Former colleagues climbed the corporate ladder, their LinkedIn profiles a testament to their ambition and drive, while I remained rooted in place, my own career trajectory as flat and uninspired as a day-old cup of coffee. But here's the thing I've come to realize. Slowly and reluctantly, I'm not alone. Not even close. For every entrepreneur who crushes it and every influencer who seems to effortlessly curate a life of perfect Instagram moments, there are thousands, maybe millions of us who are just trying to keep our heads above water. We are the quiet majority, the ones who don't make headlines or trend on Twitter. We are the ones who show up day after day to jobs that don't inspire us, to lives that feel both predictable and terrifyingly uncertain. We are the ones who are tired of pretending to have it all figured out, tired of chasing after a definition of success that feels increasingly hollow and unattainable. What if, I started to wonder, success isn't about what you achieve, but about how you navigate the inevitable setbacks and disappointments that life throws your way? What if it's not about reaching some arbitrary finish line, but about finding moments of joy and connection in the midst of the everyday grind? What if, in a world obsessed with extraordinary, there's a quiet rebellion brewing among those of us who are brave enough to embrace our own ordinariness? Maybe success is about calling your mom just to hear her voice. Maybe it's about cooking yourself a decent meal instead of ordering takeout for the third night in a row. Maybe it's about finally framing that print you've had leaning against your wall for the past 5 years. Maybe it's about finding a sliver of contentment in the midst of the chaos, a moment of peace in the eye of the storm. I don't have all the answers, not even close. But I'm starting to suspect that the secret to a meaningful life, a life worth living, lies not in chasing external validation or material possessions, but in cultivating a sense of inner peace, a quiet acceptance of our own imperfections and limitations. This isn't a call to complacency, to giving up on our dreams altogether. It's a plea for a more compassionate and realistic definition of success, one that acknowledges the inherent messiness and unpredictability of life. It's an ode to the unremarkable, to the millions of us who are just trying to make it through another day, another week, another year. To the ones who find solace in a good book, a warm cup of coffee, a shared laugh with a friend. It's a reminder that our worth is not determined by our productivity, our bank balance, or our social media following. It's about showing up for ourselves and for each other, even when it's hard, even when we feel like we're failing. It's about finding beauty in the imperfect present, in the quiet moments of grace that exist even in the midst of our struggles. So here's to the dreamers and the strivers, to the ones who dare to reach for something more, even if they never quite grasp it. And here's to the rest of us, the ones who are just trying to make it one day at a time. We are not failures. We are not broken. We are simply human. And in our shared humanity, in our collective embrace of the messy, imperfect, and often unremarkable journey of life, perhaps we can find a different kind of success. A quiet triumph of the spirit that resonates more deeply than any trophy or accolade.